Welcome back to Connecting Conversations, and I'm your host, Ivelka Powell, and I am so happy to be back with you all, talking all things relationships this time. I know you've had a number of different and heard a number of different conversations around transitions and some probably finance by now, but today we have my amazing friend who has come on to talk about her experiences around relationships, what that has been like for her in the dating world, but also bringing a new perspective in terms of her religion and cultural beliefs. So you will want to listen to this. So Amirah, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and to be able to talk to you about my life.
I know, like whenever we talk in private, it's always like
Yeah.
one or with our other friend, and it's never like airing out our laundry outside. But we won't get too deep, I promise. But it's more around, telling us a little bit about what your experience with relationships, dating, the narrative that you grew up with,
Yeah.
and the perceptions around relationships in general. So I don't know, do you want to give the audience a little bit of background as to who you are?
Yeah, of course. Hi everyone. My name's Amirah, but I'm widely known as Mia. I work in the HR field, and I also run my own small business as a home baker. Ivelka can vouch for that.
Yes,
Um,
eggs.
and my background is British Pakistani, and I am one of two siblings. Got a younger sister, and yeah, I'm just sort of here to just share my journey, my religion, and just I guess my experiences.
Great. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. And I think for a lot of people
Hmm.
navigating dating relationships, it's been an up and down journey, and it's never linear, it's never straightforward. But
Hmm.
I guess I wanted to create this space for us to talk quite openly and honestly and transparent about what that may look like from different cultures, as you said, different
Hmm.
religions,
Yeah.
as well, just so everyone can have a perspective. Because I know when we talk in private, it's very much, we're talking as we would, girl talk. But I think it's great to educate people because they may not know the differences and how the different approaches in different communities approach such
Yeah.
a sentimental topic for the most
Yeah.
part. But yeah, so I guess we'll just dive straight in. What kind of conversations at the early stages of your life, or when you were old enough to start talking about dating, marriage, what were those conversations like?
So for me personally, I never got the marriage talk until I was sort of in my early 20s. So I'm 24 at the moment, and I think I got the marriage talk when I was sort of around 21, 22. So yeah, slipping into my early 20s. And I can remember it was the most awkward conversation ever because I was just like, I'm still a baby. I'm just, I'm still growing up. And to then be hit with the marriage talk, I was a bit like, crap, I'm 21, I'm old enough to like get married now, and it's going to be time for my family to either find me a potential or whether I have to go out there and find one myself. So it's a little bit daunting because you're just a bit like, you don't really think about that because when you're in your early 20s, you're either finishing uni or you're kind of getting set into like your career or finding your path and finding your feet in life. So for me, I was working full time, I'm working part time. It was still sort of like COVID as well, so you wouldn't even think about mingling with other people or socializing with any other people. So for me, when I had that talk, I was a little bit awkward. Obviously, as a Muslim girl as well, obviously dating isn't really something we encourage in our religion. It's either marriage or you remain
That's
single.
it. I need a
Because
ring. Period.
I need the ring. Exactly. Like, hello. So it's dating isn't really something that we do. It's marriage. It's like either marriage or, like I said, nothing. And a lot of people might not know this, but completing half your religion is by getting married in Islam. So when you get married in Islam, they say you're completing half your deen. So deen is your religion. And obviously it's a sunnah that the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam followed as well. And that's why marriage is such a big part of Islam and why a lot of people it's a big way of completing half your religion. So if you imagine marriage being half your religion, what does the other half look like? So there's so many things you do for your religion, but marriage is a big part of it. And I guess as a Muslim girl, it's just one of those ones where you kind of like have to find your way and find somebody, or start looking at different ways of finding a potential spouse, because Mr. Right's not going to turn up at your door and just knock on your door and be like, "Hi, I'm here to marry you." Like, if only that
I
could
wish.
happen. If
Oh,
only that can happen, that would be great, but unfortunately not. So, there are different avenues to find a spouse. But yeah, for me, I got that talk when I was in my early 20s.
okay. No, I think that's good to know because everyone is different, and different families have different approaches in
Mm-hmm.
how they, or different timelines in how they approach this conversation. But when you were growing up and having those conversations, was there a particular, like, what can I say? Was there a particular standard that you had to uphold, or were there particular boundaries you had to abide by? And if so, what were they?
I guess growing up, I think most cultures and ethnicities can probably vouch for this, but I think growing up, we were always kind of told, don't talk to boys like that, don't have boyfriends, don't do this, don't do that. So it's kind of like you kind of grew up knowing there were like boundaries. And obviously, one big part of Islam is obviously not to free mix with the other gender,
Mm,
because it could lead to things like zina, which is obviously kind of like dating,
mm,
potentially getting close to the other gender, potentially doing things that, your religion doesn't allow. So obviously Islam was a big part of it, where it was like you're kind of being protected, one by religion and obviously by your family, to try and avoid falling into those traps. So it was always kind of like, stay away from boys, don't have boyfriends, don't have male friends, all this kind of stuff. So
mm.
you know, and then all of a sudden, when you hit your early 20s, you're kind of like, okay, so where's your husband? This is what your family expects. Like, where's your husband? Or you now need to go out and find someone. So you're just kind of a bit like, okay, but all my life you've told me to stay away from them. And now all of a sudden you want me to bring out a husband out of my pocket. Like, how does that work? So,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people can probably vouch for that as well, whether you're a Muslim girl or Muslim boy. Like,
Mm.
being told to stay away from the other gender, a lot of us grew up with that mentality.
Yeah.
And then when you do hit a marriageable age, then you do kind of struggle, because you're kind of like, okay, so now I need to find someone, or my family's introducing me to, like, potential spouses.
Yeah.
How do I even talk to them? Because all my life I've been told to stay away from them. So,
Mm.
those were like big conversations we had. And there's reasons why those conversations happen, because obviously we needed to put boundaries in place. Because one, you want to follow your religion to the utmost that you can, but also by being respectful about it as well. So I guess, yeah, like, dating isn't really something part of our religion and stuff. So, you know, now having to try and do that, it can be quite challenging.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, I in the Christian religion and
Hmm.
the way in which I also grew up, it was like, don't study boys, don't like have boyfriends, or
Don't look at them.
literally it was just like pretend they don't exist, and I'm just like,
Hmm.
how? um
They are
but
there.
they do exist, and they are there, and we
Hmm.
will have to interact with them at some point. But I was also raised with that kind of mentality of,
Yeah.
get your education first, make sure you get a good job, and then, the boy will come later on. And I think
Hmm.
there is a level as to the, or not the level, but I guess there's a journey that we take in trying to navigate that space. And not having boyfriends, I can hands on heart say that yes, I did, disobey some of those rules and did have a boyfriend, boyfriends. um
Multiple.
yeah. Look at me airing out my dirty laundry.
But you know
But
what? I guess it's
they
part of
are.
growing up as well. Like, it does happen. Like, I'm not saying everyone's perfect and
Yeah.
is going to avoid, having boyfriends or having girlfriends,
And it
etc., etc.
sometimes,
Like, it just kind of happens. And obviously,
yeah.
those boundaries were set to us from a young age. And obviously, sometimes it just doesn't get upheld. Like, you do the best you can, but
Mm,
sometimes it just
yeah.
doesn't happen. So, it's
Yeah.
part of life. I guess it's
It's
just part of growing up as well.
it
Like,
is.
it's just about exploring I guess your emotions, your feelings, because obviously when you're young, you can be quite easily not manipulated, but like
Vulnerable.
emotionally invested and vulnerable. Yeah. So then you kind of do end up having these relations. But if you can avoid it, then by all
Yeah.
means, great.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it is what it is. It's just part of life.
And it's true. And, I, I'm not going to sit here and hide away of the fact that I did have boyfriends. Some of them,
Hmm.
we term them boyfriends when they actually weren't. As children, we don't,
Yeah.
or growing up, we don't know the difference and we just call it
Hmm.
as what we think. But I think we all go on that journey as to understanding what does a relationship look like. And funnily enough, our relationships are framed and our understanding of relationships are framed
Hmm.
from in the household and the people and community we're around as well. If we see what relationships look like inside the home, we're more likely to emulate that when we
Hmm.
go outside. But aside from that, in your experience and navigating the journey of finding a husband, let's say,
Hmm.
rather than dating, finding a husband, because we all are on a search for that.
We all do it. It's part of life. We've all got to do it at some
we
point.
all we are looking for that
Hmm.
companionship, that partnership. But in your experience in navigating that world, what
Hmm.
has that been like for you? Has it been challenging, or are you experiencing the same thing like all of us in the Wild West, as I like to call it?
Yeah. For me, it is a journey. Is the most I can say. It is difficult because again, like we've said before, we grew up with the mentality of don't talk to boys, don't fall into relationships, don't have a boyfriend, don't have this, don't have that, don't be dating. Like, it was something that was invested in us since young age, and obviously, the more you look into like religious purposes as well, there's reasons as to why you try and avoid that. And alhamdulillah, I've never been in a relationship before, never had a boyfriend, I've not spoken to boys on that level. So for me, when I started I guess my marriage journey to find a husband, there are different avenues. So just generally in the Muslim world, you have the dating apps. Well, we call them dating apps, but they're more for marriage purposes.
Yeah,
So the marriage app. So you know how like the non-Muslims would have like Tinder,
yeah,
Bumble,
yeah.
Hinge, all these kind of apps that you've probably heard of and maybe even used. We've also got those. So there's Muzmatch, which is now known as Muz. There's Salons.
Mm,
There's Pure Matrimony. There's so many different ones. Like the
mm,
more I look into them and hear about them, I'm just a bit like, how the hell has all this happened? Because before, back in the days, it was like your families introduced you to people. There were
mm,
a lot of arranged sort of marriages.
mm,
So like family connections, friend connections,
yeah.
recommendations from people, suggestions, or sometimes, people would be lucky to even find someone in person. Like you might walk into like a coffee shop and the your love of the love of your life is sat there. Like, there's so many different ways you can find spouses. This one will probably make you laugh, but there are also WhatsApp groups.
Oh gosh, not the
Yeah,
WhatsApp group.
the WhatsApp groups. There are WhatsApp groups. There's Facebook groups. So there's so many
What's
different
this
avenues.
Facebook?
Listen, the older aunties do. The aunties do. Um, so there's different avenues of ways to find a spouse. Even on LinkedIn, I was scrolling through LinkedIn the other day, and there's this mother and daughter duo on LinkedIn who do like Muslim matchmaking. So like they've got a whole business out of it. So even seeing that on LinkedIn, I was like,
That's
God, the
crazy.
world has really gone a bit crazy. Like the fact that there's matchmakers now on LinkedIn trying to recruit candidates for marriage, like it's actually crazy. But
It
that's
shows you
the
how
it's a
tough the market is,
yeah,
doesn't it?
that's it's so tough. But it just goes to show there's so many different ways you can now find your potential life partner.
Mm.
So for me personally, like my mum has been part of like the WhatsApp group. She even asked me to make a marriage CV, which was the weirdest thing I've ever done.
Tell us a little
So
bit more about that marriage CV, if you can. Like, what does that consist of?
so I never knew what a marriage CV was until my mum joined this WhatsApp group from British Muslims trying to get married. And then she basically sent me a template of like another female's profile, and then she was like, just copy this and just add your own information. So, on the marriage CV, it's sort of like you don't put any details of who you are, as in like your name, your picture,
Oh,
or anything like that. It's just more general information like
Mm.
your age, your sort of location, your occupation, any family members you have, any you know, your caste, your religion,
Yeah.
not religion because it's a Muslim group chat, but I would assume if there's wider groups, then
Yeah.
obviously you'd put your religion. But
Yeah.
caste is quite a big thing for a lot of families,
Mm.
especially within the, I guess, Pakistani community. I don't know much more about the other ethnicities, but I know in like Pakistani backgrounds, caste is quite a big thing. So people put caste on there, where they're from back home. So you know, whether you're Pakistani, Indian, Bengali, you know, you put where you are from back home, because I think that's quite a big factor for a lot of families as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So you know, you'd kind of put where you are back home, any languages you speak. So like whether you speak English, Urdu, Patwari, Punjabi, all that kind of stuff.
Mm.
And then you just put a little bit about yourself, like about a little bit about you, your hobbies,
Mm.
anything you're interested in, and then you kind of just put what you're looking for in a spouse. So you know, you'd put your height suggestions. You'd put, you know, whether we all know that's a big thing for me.
Yeah, we
um,
do.
6 foot plus, please. Um,
Who
so
knows? Your
you know,
husband might be listening.
listen, if you're out there, please hit me up. So you know, you'd put like your age, sort of age range that you're looking for. So whether you're looking for like 30 to 40-year olds, whether you're looking for 25 to 30,
Mm.
etc. So you just kind of put all that information on there. And if someone in that group, whether it's the person themselves looking for themselves, or whether it's a parent looking for their child, or a sibling looking for their sibling, or whoever, you know, whoever's posting the profile on behalf of others, you kind of just read each other's profiles, and if you think there could be a good compatibility or a potential good match, then you would reach out to that person
Yeah.
privately. So you message them on WhatsApp and say, I've seen your so and so's profile, here's my so and so's profile, would you be interested? And then you just kind of take it from there. So it's kind of like a screening stage. So like any job interview, like you'd review the CV. If you think, okay, yeah, potentially a good candidate, you'd kind of go to the next step, whether it be exchanging pictures, having a phone call,
Yeah.
just to find out a little bit more about the person, or you know, speak to,
Mm.
like for example, my mum posts on my behalf. So you know, we've had times where people would send their sons' profiles and be like, can we exchange pictures, or can we have a phone call? So it's kind of like you kind of go back and forth a little bit, and just to see where it takes you. And you know, alhamdulillah, it's worked for a lot of people. Like, you know, I know some people who've found their spouses through like a WhatsApp group or a Facebook
Okay.
group. So you know, it does work. It's not guaranteed it works for everybody, but there has been some
Yeah.
success stories, which is great. And I even attended a wedding of one of them. So, you know,
Amazing.
it there's yeah, it works. But then you've also got like the apps, which is again standard. It's not really much different to, I guess, what Tinder would look like, or
Yeah.
what Hinge would look like. So you know, the apps are there
Mm.
as a
Yeah.
form of finding someone, or you've got connections, like you know, whether a friend introduces you to somebody,
Yeah.
or you know, whether you've got mutual friends, whether there's a suggestion like, oh, I've got a cousin who blah blah blah, like you know. So word of mouth is a very big part. But what I also
Mm.
found out recently
Mm.
was a lot of local mosques around the UK have a service where you give your details, so again a bit like a marriage CV,
Yeah.
and it's like a mosque service. So if you give your CV to them, they'll kind of match you with their database.
Oh, wow.
So again, that's quite a big thing that's
Mm.
happening nowadays as well, which I didn't know about until I spoke to somebody recently who told me about it. So again, that's another form of
You,
doing that.
yeah. You know what I love about even just hearing you talking about the varying ways or varied ways of
Hmm.
navigating and searching is the fact that you
Hmm.
actually have a community behind you, backing you,
Yeah.
supporting you in that search. I think
And I think that's so important as
it,
well, because if you didn't
yeah.
have that supporting community, it would make the process much more difficult.
Hello. But I say that in the Christian community, I'm learning now that
Hmm.
there are places and events and organizations that are setting up these different organizations or
Yeah.
particular like speed dating or speed dating like type events for people
Hmm.
to come together and meet like-minded Christians.
That
And
happens within the Muslim community as well. I've
mm,
seen so many adverts, whether it be through social media or
yeah,
where I've heard people talk about it. Like Nawab's is quite a big restaurant, well known, and
Yeah.
they do like Muslim events. Again, a bit like
Really?
speed dating, but you go with someone, you take like your a chaperone
Okay.
with you. So in Islam we call that a mahram.
Yes.
And I know we've spoken about mahrams before, but for those who don't know, a mahram is like a chaperone, and in Islam, it's someone you cannot marry. So for a woman, her mahram would be her brother, her dad, her granddad,
Mm.
her nephews, her maternal aunt, her maternal uncles, paternal uncles, and a husband. So you would kind of attend these events with ideally with a chaperone, just to kind of go and to network, I guess. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's those within the Muslim community as well.
Yeah. It's quite great because I think when I was younger, I wasn't aware of all of this that was happening behind the
Mhm.
scenes, and I think with the help of social media and communities becoming a lot more what's the word, aligned, and
Mhm.
becoming a lot more of a focal point of support, I think we're starting to see a shift in where there is a
Mhm.
community backing, you know, different groups, different people on a varied number of different things, from like your career to like
Mhm.
relationships. And I think it's so heartwarming to know that there is a community behind that's also helping you on this journey, navigating and finding a husband, or for for our male counterparts finding a wife, or so on and so
Mhm.
forth. And I think it's so important that in this day and age we need those additional things, because it's so hard to just sit behind a screen and text someone and getting to know them on the dating landscape, and it we kind of lose that human touch to an extent. I To be honest, I always said like I'll meet my husband at a work. I don't know why I think that, but we'll see. I'll come back here in a few years
It's
time
your
and
delusions.
I'll let you know. But I think it's great that there are more and more
Yeah.
community support in this particular era, that one in which I've never seen happen before. So
Yeah.
I guess with that being said, like, now you have the support system. Now kind of your avenues, the different
Mhm.
tools that you have access to find a husband. What's kind of your personal strategy? Like, how are you engaging in some of these, or on some of these platforms? Is there anything in particular that you're looking for, or are there any kind of conversation starters? So, for instance, are you laying down your boundaries at the get go, or are you waiting to see how they kind of conversate? Do you tell them, like, I don't know, how the way in which you were raised, your background, your culture, like what has that been like for you if you've started those conversations?
I'm just waiting for Mr. Right to turn up at my house. No, so I've been on this journey for a little while now, whether it be through recommendations, whether it be through the apps, whether it
Yeah.
be through the WhatsApp groups. So I think on my starting point into this whole process was the WhatsApp groups that my mum had joined, and obviously creating a marriage CV, which was the worst thing I've ever done, because I
Okay.
was like, what do I talk about? What am I? And then it kind of makes you think when you have to write down what you're looking for, like, what do I really want in a spouse? Like, what are my preferences? Like, do I want someone who's the same caste as me, say who speaks the same language? Do I want someone who lives in the same area as me? Like, it really does make you wonder, like, it makes you think, what am I looking for in a spouse? Because yeah, it's easy to be like, oh yeah, I really want a husband or I really want a wife. But then you have to think about the qualities you want in the person. You have to think
Mm.
about, whether you want someone with a similar mindset, similar background, so there's so many things to think about. Um, so, when I started my journey with the WhatsApp groups, we had a couple of profile exchanges. I spoke to some great people. It kind of just makes you realize, okay, yeah, I can speak to people as like a normal human being.
Yeah.
And I guess with me, yeah, I kind of lay my boundaries from the get-go.
Mhm.
I make it clear that I'm here for marriage purposes only. Like, my intentions are to get to know you with the intention of marriage being the that final outcome.
Yeah.
And obviously when you talk to people, you don't always get that connection straight away.
Yeah.
So you kind of know, like within conversations, whether
Where
it's
it's
a
gonna
good
go.
potential for you, or whether it's a bit of a dead end straight away. You know, I've had conversations that have lasted 5 minutes, because straight away you kind of realize, okay, this isn't my kind of vibe, or this isn't for me.
Yeah.
Or you carry on talking for a couple of weeks or a couple of days or however long it takes, just to kind of get a feel of the person.
Yeah.
And obviously there's no pressure. Like,
Yeah.
if it goes ahead, it goes ahead. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of conversations I had with people was generally through various apps that I've tried. So you kind of like match with people just depending on their profiles, and then you just kind of see, with, I guess, with the pictures, whether there's like mutual attraction, and if there's not, there's no hard feelings. Like, carry on and move on to the next. And within conversations, you kind of, once you start speaking to somebody, you kind of get a feel of their kind of vibe
Mm,
through how they message, or
mm,
if you progress onto a phone call or a video call, you kind of see um what they sound like. And again,
yeah.
like I never thought, like, someone said to me voice attraction is a big thing, and I was like, I never thought about it that way.
Wow.
So you even like hearing someone's voice, you're kind of like, okay, can I live with this, can I not? And it really does open your eyes to
Yeah.
everything. So like, when you are writing down, okay, this is what I want in a spouse, you have to take these things into consideration as
Yeah.
well. And I never thought about it that way, because not once growing up did anyone ever tell me these are the things you've got to think about.
Mm. So do you
So
think now you know this, now you
yeah.
know all of this information, do you think you could
Hmm.
have been better prepared by family or friends in this journey of finding a husband?
I would say so. Yeah, like
Mm.
I kind of went into the process not knowing a lot. Like, all I knew was I'm looking to get married. Or I'm looking to get to know somebody for the intention of marriage.
Yeah.
You obviously want someone like, for me, I want someone who's Muslim. I want someone who, I can practice my religion with, learn together, grow together, build, good foundation. But all the little things, like maybe someone's occupation, or
Mm.
so, like an age range or location, like
Hmm.
those things never really occurred to me. And I really wish someone had said to me, these are the little things you have to look out for. Because obviously, I think growing up, we were obviously told, don't talk to boys, don't do this, don't do that. But then when you have to like think about settling down, you're kind of going in with a
Yeah.
blind focus, because okay, yeah, you're looking for a spouse,
Hmm.
but what do you want in a spouse? Like, it's not really
Yeah.
something, I guess, we've ever been told to think about.
Yeah.
So you are kind of going in with a blind eye and just trying to figure it out for yourself. And I guess with every person you speak to, you kind of learn a bit more about
Mm.
what you're looking for in a spouse, whether you want someone who's a doctor, whether you want someone who's a lawyer, whether you want someone who does Uber. Like, there's so many different things to think about. And I guess with the whole process, you learn more about yourself and what you're looking for, rather than
Mm.
somebody else. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you kind of like,
I-
it's kind of like finding your own 2 feet as well
yeah.
with the whole process.
And I think for me, on being on this journey of singlehood,
Hmm.
um, I think I've definitely,
Singlehood.
yeah,
Yeah,
I've
you and me both,
definitely learned,
girl.
yeah, I've definitely learned how to be more comfortable in my own skin.
Hmm.
Um, and I think you're right. The more you talk to people, the more you realize, actually, I like this, but I don't like this. I like this quality, but
Hmm.
that won't gel with me.
And it kind of helps set your boundaries in
Yeah.
place as well, like from the get-go, because I think if you leave it too late, you're kind of gonna let somebody walk all over you. And if you accept it in the beginning and don't set those boundaries straight away,
Mm.
you might you might involve yourself in getting to know somebody for months, and then actually turn around and be like, actually, you know what, this isn't for me. And then you just kind of, you don't want to waste your own time as well. So
Yeah.
I think it's so important, set your boundaries
Mm.
at the beginning, like kind of really, really think about, like, for anyone who's going into the process or who's in the process, really, really think about what you want as a person, and then set your boundaries straight away. I'm not saying be a closed book,
No.
be completely closed and, have your guard up. Yes, have your guard up for your own protection,
Mm.
but also know what it is that you're setting your boundaries for. And it could be even something so small as not opening up about your past, until you're ready to do that. Like, there's certain things you just have to put in place before you can actually involve yourself in getting to know somebody on a deeper level.
Yeah. No, I totally agree, and I call it like my self-discovery journey, because as much as I'm
Mm.
learning other people, I'm learning so much about myself, and
Yeah.
even the qualities that I want to take and not take into a marriage, for instance, because there are
Mm-hmm.
definitely some habits that, I have that aren't the greatest habits.
Yeah.
And not everyone is going to like that. But it's also recognizing that, okay, maybe I need to sort this out before I actually go into a relationship, because this can be quite damaging. I don't want to bring
Mm-hmm.
my trauma to, a partnership and then have everything crumbling as a result. Um,
And
but
you don't want it to be used against you down the line either,
100%.
as well. And you never know, like something that you might think, okay, maybe this is the bad habit I have about myself. Maybe somebody will love that and accept that.
Yeah.
So again, it's about finding someone who you're compatible with, who will be like, actually, Evelka, I don't like the way you do this, and we need to work on that. Or
Mm,
you might even have self-reflection where you're like, oh, I need to stop doing this a little bit more, and then kind of like, work around that. And
yeah.
there's no harm in doing that. And again, I think as much as we want to find someone and build that connection, I guess a lot of the whole process of finding a spouse or companion or a partner is finding yourself as well.
Yeah. And it all comes down to, I was speaking to someone just recently about this. It's all
Hmm.
about being comfortable in yourself and
Yeah.
knowing yourself, knowing where you stand. And, for those that are spiritual, whatever religion
Hmm.
you honor, it's about firstly understanding who you are in the spirit and,
Hmm.
in the image of God, and making sure that that's at the center of everything that you do. Because once
Yeah.
you know who you are, because God has told you who you are, no one else can tell you otherwise.
Hmm.
And you're empowered to go into conversations or, dating landscapes,
Yeah.
really proud and comfortable that this is what I have to offer. This is what I can bring to the table as a wife, as a husband.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that that is the focal point, for me, is just knowing who you are, being comfortable in who you are, being confident in that as well. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
I would agree. And I guess it's also identifying, like you said, like maybe your own bad habits and be like, actually, maybe I can work on this. Maybe
yeah,
this will help me down the line.
yeah,
Or, or if you are 100% confident in who you are and you know what you want and what you're looking for, then you know what boundaries you're setting from the get-go. Like if
yeah,
you're someone who's quite ambitious, for example, you're going to want someone who's on the same level.
yeah.
Whereas if you're speaking to someone who's quite ambitious, whereas you're not as a person, you kind of might think, actually, maybe I could do better and maybe I should be a bit more
Mm,
ambitious. And then again, it's one big learning curve.
yeah.
And I
And it
think
doesn't
there's
stop at
so much to
marriage.
it.
Yeah,
No,
like
it
marriage
doesn't.
in itself is a
It's continuous. It continuously evolves.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I just wanted to touch on two things that we glanced over in this
Hmm.
conversation, and one of them was around cost. You said when you
Yeah.
are looking for potential husbands, well, husband, a potential husband.
How many do you want me to have?
I don't know how much can um,
Well, Islamically, a man can have up to four wives.
mm,
So, men are lucky out here. But
no,
listen, I
very
come with four personalities. Why do you need four wives?
yeah, like what? No, one is enough. Um, but
Exactly.
when you are looking for your husband and on this
Hmm.
journey, you mentioned about cost. How
Hmm.
important is cost to you? And is it like a deciding factor?
No. So
Okay.
for me, it's not a huge deal breaker.
Mm,
I know for some people it is. Like I've spoken to some people where, they've asked me what caste I am or what background
mm,
I am, and I've told them, and they're like, actually, no, I'm looking for someone who's the same as me, which is completely understandable. Some families generally like to keep it within their own sort of like tribes and their own
mhm,
caste.
yeah.
Whereas for me, it's not a huge deal breaker. If someone's not the same caste as me, it's not the end of the world because the person can be so amazing. I'm not going to let that one little difference ruin a potential great relationship, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I know for a lot of the older generation back in the day, it was a very, very big thing. But I think as
Mm,
time has gone on, my generation and the generations to come will not care about it. Yes, it is something I ask a potential spouse when I am talking to somebody. It is a question I ask because I know at the end of the day, when I do find someone that I want to introduce my family to, I know my elders, like my grandparents and my
Would
parents, will
ask.
ask. They will ask. It's a question people ask. It's a general question. It's and I know for my family they'll accept whoever I
Mm,
bring home. Like, it's not going to be the end of the world, but
yeah,
I know it's a question they'll ask. So for me, it's not a deal breaker, and I'm
yeah,
not going to turn a relationship down just because someone might not be a Raja. Like,
mm,
my caste is Raja.
mhm,
If someone's a Chaudhary, I'm not going to turn around and be like, I'm not going to marry you because you're a Chaudhary. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
But so it's all about accepting as well. So
yeah.
no, it's not a deal breaker for me, but yes, it is something that I ask. Not because it's important to me to know, but I know my family will want to know.
Yeah.
So it's more of a family kind of thing and the older generation kind of thing. But for me personally, no, it doesn't matter.
That's so interesting because you talk to so many different people as to
Yeah.
specifically religiously, culturally, what they'd
Mhm.
be looking for, and how would that play out with the family in particular. But
Mhm.
as you said, I think older generations had a specific kind of
Mindset.
person
Yeah.
image, that they wanted to carry on for generations. But as
Yeah.
the world is becoming more and more modernized,
Mhm.
and we are interacting with each other a lot more, and a lot of migration has been happening,
Yeah.
it's bound that we're going to find people that may not be from the same background or from the same
Yeah.
country, and sometimes not even from the same religion, um,
Mhm.
or ethnicity. And I think, you know, it's down to personal choice ultimately,
Yeah.
and how someone wants to navigate that. But I know for me, I was never brought up, well, back in the Caribbean, we didn't have like tribes or anything like that. It's just like
Yeah.
you just had to be careful you didn't marry or were dating your cousin because the island is that small. So it was like
Yeah, just try
just
to
have
try
to
and stay
be,
away from that.
yeah, you just had to be really mindful as to
Yeah.
who your family were, because we might be related somehow.
Yeah, there's
um,
you know what, there's links everywhere, regardless of
everywhere,
where you are, there's links everywhere. And
everywhere. It's crazy.
it's such a small world. You just never know who you're bound to bump into or who your person might know. Like,
Yeah,
it's crazy.
so crazy. But that's part of the whole navigating it all, and
Hmm.
the discovery of finding a husband and relationships in general. But I guess something as we were talking came to mind is around your experience, whether you found this whole journey quite
Hmm.
transactional. I think personally for me, in terms of my kind of discovery and
Hmm.
speaking to different people, at times I found it quite transactional, as if you put in something, you get out something, you don't like it, you move on,
Yeah.
and that's the end of it. And for people who don't know me, I was in a relationship for 7 odd years,
Hmm.
and that came to an end. And so when I started that relationship when I was around 18, 19 years old, and ended it in my early 20s, early to mid 20s.
Hmm.
Um, and even in that 7 year period, the world landscape of dating had changed dramatically. So I left that
Hmm.
relationship very, very blindsided and naive as to what this
Hmm.
dating world and pool and search for marriage looks like. But in doing so, I found even some conversations and engagements with people very transactional.
Yeah.
And it's just like people kind of lost, the essence and the beauty of it. I don't know
Yeah.
how you felt or you found it.
No, I completely agree. It's like you kind of take one thing from someone, you give something, and then that's it. Like, whether you take it forward or not is another story. Like, but no, I completely agree with your with what you've just said about it being transactional, because you're not always going to end up with someone perfect, or you're not going to end a talking stage and be like, that was a waste of time, because you're actually going to learn something from
Mm,
it, whether you've learned something about the other gender, whether you've learned something about yourself, whether you've
mm,
learned something a bit more about the whole experience. Like,
Yeah.
you are going to take something away from it, whether it's a positive or a negative. And even if it is a negative, you can take that away, learn from it, and turn that into a positive going
Yeah.
forward with whoever you speak to next.
Mm.
Um, but like you said, it's a crazy world out there trying to get to know somebody, or, trying to find a companion or a spouse or a
Yeah.
husband, wife, whatever you're looking for. Whether it's for marriage, whether it's just, dating for a while, whether it's,
Yeah.
you're looking for just a companion for now.
Mm.
Like, there's so many different things people are looking for
Yeah.
and wanting to gain out of the whole experience, whether they're on the apps, the groups, WhatsApp groups, whether they're going to these events, like speed dating events that you mentioned,
Mm.
whether you're signing up to your local place of worship, like, the
Yeah.
mosques. And I was having a conversation with one of the girls that I work with, and she's Sikh, and we were talking about marriage and obviously the process, because she was asking me how my journey's going and if I'm, still on the apps and stuff. And she actually told me that she got married through the Gurdwara. So she told me that they have that service as well, like a bit similar to what the mosques do. They have the profiles. You kind of show your interest, share your profile, and she's been happily married for like a good 7-8 years now. So these things do work, but yeah,
Mm.
it's just very hit and miss. And I think you just have to be true to yourself and just make sure you don't
Mm.
let your boundaries go, and stick to what you want. And again, but the more people you speak to, the more you learn about yourself,
Mm.
as well as the other person and the whole experience itself. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's just so much to take away from it. So yeah, I do agree it's very transactional.
Yeah. And I think the most important thing out of all of it is don't lose yourself in it, because it can be frustrating,
Yes.
it can be tiring, it can be, exhausting,
Hmm.
but don't lose yourself in it, and
Yeah.
don't let anyone take advantage of you, because unfortunately there are a
100%.
lot of people out there
Yeah.
that only want what they want and that's it.
Yeah.
And we just have to be really careful and go into these spaces with an open
Hmm.
mind, but also with a protective film to
Yeah.
ensure we don't get hurt in the mix of it.
And I
I
think
think.
just following on from what you've just said, I completely agree. Don't lose yourself. And I think what I've noticed as well, whether it be through friends or people that I know that have got married, is do not change yourself completely just to fit into someone else's specifications. Like, if someone's looking for this, and you're not that, do not change yourself completely to meet someone's specifications, because at the end of the day, it is just a talking stage. And these are talking stages you are going to go through. And I think if you're completely changing yourself just to meet someone's requirements and it doesn't work out at the end, you've lost yourself and your own personality trying to fit into someone else's criteria. So one thing I would say for guys and girls is be who you are and let someone love you for who you are. Don't change yourself just to meet someone's criteria, just to say, yeah, I've got married.
Yeah,
Don't do that.
I love
It's
that.
not worth it.
I love that, and I think that's so important. And even
Hmm.
looking back in my previous relationship, there were things that I did to make myself small in
Yeah.
order to accommodate them,
Yeah.
because I was scared to be my full self, because it wasn't going to align with where they were at in life. And
Yeah.
so I made myself small. And, I've learned from that now. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
well, if you don't like it how I am and the things that I do, then too bad. But you're going to
Yeah.
get this is all of me.
Yeah. You accept me for who I am, or you keep it stepping.
Exactly. And, there will be, no matter what, there will be someone out there
Yeah.
that is your person.
Yeah.
And no matter where you go, high and low, you will be connected at some point. It's just about divine timing, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And, I'm a very big believer in it's all in God's timing. Like, I've left it in God's hands.
Yeah.
I know God's got me. And,
Yeah.
if you're not someone who's very religious, then, it's just about accepting it will all happen in good time,
Yeah.
whether you're religious or not.
Just
Everything will
remain
happen in good
hopeful.
time.
Just be
Yeah,
hopeful.
exactly. And like you said, don't belittle yourself just to make someone else feel better.
Mm.
Because at the end of the day, you are your own person. Yes, if you think you've got bad habits and you can work on it, do that. Absolutely work on yourself, but don't lose who you are just to make someone else happy.
I love that. I love that. Well, that's
I
a
should write a book.
you can.
We
You
need to
can.
write a
So,
book.
book by Amirah on
Yeah.
relationships, how to find a husband.
Yeah, absolutely.
But no, I think that
Your guide to marriage.
imagine I would
Yeah, best-selling
literally
author. I'm all here for it. Listen, we need to make this
baker,
happen.
HR professional, author, girl. You got it
Mm,
all up on your sleeve.
got it all going on.
Well, what a great note to end on. And I hope, whoever comes across this conversation and is listening to this conversation finds this quite helpful. And we'll
Yeah,
have more of these conversations coming around relationships that, not just romantic relationships. I know that's what we've touched on here, but
yeah,
even like friendships and what that look like. And, you know, corporate relationships, what's that like? So we have a whole episode, episodes on relationships coming. So stay tuned for that. But thank you, Amirah, once again for joining us and sharing your story and being quite transparent. And I think it's really going to resonate with a lot of people who are of Muslim faith in navigating
mhm.
this very difficult space.
Oh, it's a
But
tough side
also
out here, but
beautiful. Let's not be all
yes,
negative.
you know what? There's so much blessings in it, and there's so much happiness you can find in it. The whole process of starting your journey, whether whether you're in your 20s, whether you're in your teens, whether you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, regardless of your age, it is a journey. It's not going to be the most beautiful, but the fruits of it at the end is going to be so much more worth it.
Yeah.
I'll let you know when I get to that stage, but
Oh, I
it
can't
is a
wait. I'll be
journey.
at the wedding. I don't know about anyone else, but I'll be at the wedding.
Exactly, you have to be. But regardless of what stage of your journey you're on, I really, really hope, the people who are listening to this, it does work out for you. There's going to be bumps in the road, but just think one day you'll be in your own home with the love of your life,
Mm,
and you'll be like, you know what? It was a journey, but we made it.
yeah, I love that. Well, thank you, Amira. That was
Adding that to
great.
my book.
I love that. But no, thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on and
Thank you
once
for
again
having me.
sharing your story. And yeah, we'll see you soon. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
definitely. Thank you.